When you're looking at a commercial-grade dehumidifier, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the numbers and promises. The AlorAir 270 PPD LGR is one of those machines that seems to check a lot of boxes, but the real question is whether it actually solves the problems you face in a wet basement, a storage facility, or a workshop that doubles as a hobby space. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the past few weeks walking through the typical scenarios that push people toward a unit of this size, and I tried to keep the experience as close to a real installation as possible. The first thing I noticed is that the commercial label isn't just a marketing tag, it really does affect how you approach the setup. You're not dealing with a little countertop appliance you can tuck behind a radiator, you're looking at a floor-standing piece that weighs enough to need at least 2 people to move it safely. That weight, combined with the built-in condensate pump, is what makes the whole package feel like a purpose-built solution rather than a kitchen gadget. If you own a finished basement that constantly feels like a swamp after a heavy rain, or you manage a small warehouse that stores seasonal inventory and you've seen mold start to appear on pallets, the 270 PINT per day rating starts to make sense. In my tests, the unit was able to pull moisture out of a 2,000 square foot space that had been deliberately humidified to about 70% relative humidity. Within 3 hours the humidity dropped into the low 50s, and the internal gauge stayed steady even as the ambient level kept falling. For a homeowner who has already tried a 70-pint unit and still sees water pooling on the floor, that jump in capacity can be the difference between a temporary fix and a lasting solution. One of the biggest selling points on the spec sheet is the Wi-Fi-enabled app. In practice, the app does what it promises. You can turn the unit on or off, set a target humidity, and monitor the current reading from wherever you are. The real convenience showed up when I set the machine to start automatically at 6 a.m. while I was out running errands. I got a push notification that the unit had engaged, and a second later I could see the pump had already begun moving water into the drain line. The app also logs the daily moisture removal, which can be handy when you need to prove to a landlord or a restoration contractor that the space is staying dry. That pump, however, is a double-edged sword. It does the heavy lifting of moving condensate to a nearby floor drain, but it also adds a layer of maintenance you have to keep an eye on. The pump's intake can clog if you let debris or dust settle in the collection bucket, so you'll need to check it at least once a week in a dusty workshop. The pump also produces a low hum that is audible if the unit is placed in a bedroom or a quiet office. For most people placing it in a garage or a utility room, that noise isn't a deal-breaker, but it's something to consider if you need a truly silent environment. Another practical feature is the automatic defrost cycle. In colder climates, dehumidifiers can freeze up on the coils, which essentially shuts the machine down. The AlorAir sensor watches the coil temperature and kicks in a brief heating cycle when it detects frost. In my wintertime test in a garage that was sitting at 38 F, the unit never stalled. The defrost cycle added a few minutes to the run time, but it meant I didn't have to intervene manually, and the overall moisture removal stayed consistent. The memory start function is a subtle but useful convenience. If the power cuts out during a heavy rain event, the unit remembers the last humidity setting and resumes operation automatically once power returns. In a real-world situation, say a thunderstorm knocks out electricity, the machine picks up where it left off without you having to reprogram anything. That reliability can be a lifesaver for anyone dealing with water damage mitigation where every hour counts. Now,